A St. Louis couple called Mark and Patricia McCloskey became folk heroes to many across the country after they were confronted by a mob, a dangerous mob, outside their home and returned with firearms to protect it and themselves.
After dozens of protests turned violent around America in the summer of 2020, with sometimes rioters burning buildings, throwing bricks, and killing more than 30 people, a St. Louis couple stood outside bearing arms to defend their home. The crowd had broken through a gate on the private street. The St. Louis prosecuting attorney brought charges against the homeowners.
They stood up for themselves against the mob. The McCloskey's fate remains in the hands of the mob in the form of the St. Louis Circuit Attorney General Kimberly Gardner. Gardner is a radical prosecutor, one of many elected in recent years, with financial backing from billionaire George Soros.
It was only one example of hundreds in which prosecutors have turned a blind eye toward violent rioters, declining to prosecute them while blaming the victims, and virtually all of them have been bought and paid for by one man.
George Soros is an enigma of sorts. He's born in 1930. He was a teenager when the Nazis took over his native Hungary. He was born in Budapest. He was from a Jewish family, but his father was able to arrange for him to be taken in by a Christian family, and he pretended to be a Christian rather than a Jew to escape the Nazis. He did assist Nazis at the time as a teenager. Now, obviously, none of us who've had lives vastly easier than living under tyrannies like that, we shouldn't be quick to judge, of course, but probably that had to be a profound experience for him at the time.
Soros was once asked about the experience on CBS's 60 Minutes.
You watched lots of people get shipped off to the death camps.
Right. I was 14 years old.
My understanding is that you went out with this protector of yours who swore that you were his adopted godson.
Yes, yes.
Went out, in fact, and helped in the confiscation of property from the Jews.
That's right. Yes.
I mean, that sounds like an experience that would send lots of people to the psychiatric couch for many, many years. Was it difficult?
Not at all. Not at all. Maybe as a child you don't see the connection, but it created no problem at all.
No feeling of guilt.
No.
Though Soros did this work during World War II, one defensive tactic he often employs is to characterize critics as anti-Semitic. Ironic considering the fact that Soros is one of the largest donors to anti-Israeli causes.
He doesn't believe in open societies. He wants to destroy two of the freest societies on the face of the earth. One is the United States and the other is Israel.
The phrase anti-Semitism is used and has been used in American politics for several decades already, not as a term of meaningful political discourse, but instead as a bludgeon to silence conservatives, particularly Christian conservatives, into submission and silence. So I utterly reject that charge.
He later goes to New York and gets into finance and becomes a billionaire financier over the years. There's much controversy there. He famously broke the British pound.
Are you religious?
No.
Do you believe in God?
No.
Soros told us he believes God was created by man, not the other way around, which may be why he thinks he can smooth out the world's imperfections.
The Apostle Paul notes in Romans 1 that when we refuse to worship God, we will instead worship the creature. Soros told the independent newspaper in Great Britain, "It is a sort of disease when you consider yourself some kind of God, the creator of everything. But I feel comfortable about it now since I began to live it out."
To say the man has a huge ego doesn't even begin to explain his messianic zeal to turn the world into something he likes, this socialist utopia governed by a global elite, with him at the head of it all.
With his billions, Soros has become perhaps the most powerful financial engine for the radical left in America. Funneled through his Open Societies Foundation and numerous other fronts, He has built for himself a massive web of political influence unmatched by anyone else. Scott Walter of the Capital Research Center has been tracing the Soros money trail for years. How influential is George Soros because of his giving in American politics?
I've spent decades of my life studying the left, and especially all the nonprofit apparatus built up in the left. And he does bestride that as a colossus. Almost never will you find a significant left-wing group that doesn't receive money from both the Ford Foundation and George Soros.
Though he tends to guard his words and speak in vague generalities, the truth sometimes pierces through. In his 2006 book, The Age of Fallibility, Soros wrote, "The main obstacle to a stable and just world order is the United States."
Soros's understanding of the world is effectively, we need to control it. People cannot take care of themselves. They need to be controlled by a handful of wealthy elites, technocrats, people who know what's best for you better than you do. And it doesn't matter which country he touches, where his hundreds of millions of dollars end up. It's the same outcome. How do we erase the character of this nation and replace it with something artificial and globalist?
Soros has long funded immigration groups whose goal is to get rid of America's border with Mexico and stop deportation of illegal immigrants, and also extend the vote to illegal immigrants. So you see where this is going. The grand democratic strategy, as envisioned by George Soros, is to have open borders, endless numbers of illegal immigrants who are then converted into citizens who can vote.
Climate policy has long been a tool of the left for increasing governmental control over all aspects of life. And here too, George Soros' funding has been key.
In recent years, this cause of environmentalism, like so many other good causes, has been used by the radical left in their goal to get bigger government and to further regulate American business, which inevitably will result in fewer jobs in America. And once again, when you look at some of the groups that claim they're just regular environmental groups, in fact, they've come to embrace very radical agendas. And some of these groups are making this radical message because they're encouraged to do that by billionaires like George Soros with money that he donates to these organizations.
Every single major environmental group has Soros money in it. The Green New Deal is a big part of it. That's championed by Representative Alexandria Ocasio-Cortez, Brooklyn, New York, who's a Marxist, who's backed by George Soros, and whose views have been embraced by the Democratic Party. It's in the platform, most of the Green New Deal. The Green New Deal would destroy American prosperity as we know it.
Those who have traced the money say there is virtually no far-left project in America today that doesn't somehow have the fingerprints of George Soros on it.
It is wise for us to look into where is all the money coming that is funding some of the things we're seeing, the attack on religious liberty, the undermining of our First Amendment rights. When you do a little bit of digging, it's absolutely clear that one of the leading figures behind that effort has been the far left individual, George Soros.